Hello and welcome. This is video number 6 in an 8-part series about World War I. And in today's video, the focus is going to be on the United States getting involved with World War I. United States, though an important country in the world, was a country that had tried to stay on the sidelines as long as it possibly could during World War I. In fact, really worked hard to take the position that it wasn't a situation that concerned us. It wasn't a problem for us to get involved with. But eventually there would be some things that would happen that would make it so that the United States really couldn't continue to stay out of the war any longer. So that's going to be the focus. And then in this video, we'll actually talk through the conclusion of the fighting. There'll be a couple of videos that will follow this one that will get into the peace settlement afterwards and just what it really meant moving forward. So hopefully you find this video helpful and informative. Here we go. So when we last left off, we were talking about trench warfare fighting and that being one of the characteristics of the war. We also talked about the countries that were involved in the war from the beginning, and one of them that was not a part of the war from the beginning was the United States. In fact, during much of the time World War I was happening, the United States very firmly and very clearly took the position that they were not going to be involved in what was going on in Europe, that the United States was not going to be involved in foreign wars, and that we were going to be a neutral country, and that's all there was to it. In fact, in our 1916 presidential election, the person who became president, who won that election, Woodrow Wilson, big part of his campaigning was to keep us out of the war. So that was very much our position, very much our intent. Things, though, would of course change as we do, in fact, enter the war. So I just want to speak briefly to the things that changed. One of the things that led to us getting involved in the war had to do with what was going on at sea. Our position as a neutral country, at least in part, meant that we could sail at sea, we could trade with whatever countries we wanted to trade with, and part of that involved shipping. But one of the things that started to happen is U.S. ships at sea came under attack by German ships and German submarines. And even though there was a time where Germany left us alone, as we got farther into the war, getting into 1917 especially, Germany engaged in what was called unrestricted submarine warfare, which basically meant they were going to attack any ship that they encountered that was not on their side. And despite the fact that we told them to leave us alone, they ended up going after a number of U.S. ships. And of course, that was pretty upsetting to us. The other big thing that ended up happening was related to something called the Zimmermann message. Basically, what the Zimmermann message was a note that was correspondence between Germany and Mexico that happened to be intercepted by Great Britain, a country on the Allied side. And what was discovered in that note was that it was basically Germany trying to make a deal with Mexico that if they would be an ally, that if Mexico would be an ally of Germany, that when the war was done, when the war was done in Europe, that they would come over and help Mexico conquer land that America had won from Mexico years before. And the combination of U.S. ships being sunk and then what appeared to be plans for a future attack on the United States really pushed us past the point of being able to remain a neutral country, but rather to join this war. And so that's exactly what we did. On April 2nd, 1917, President Wilson asked Congress for a formal declaration of war. And the way our system works under the U.S. Constitution is, even though the president has a degree of war-making powers, when it comes to a fully declared war, an officially declared war, that's actually done by Congress. So Wilson went to the Congress on April 2nd, asked for this war declaration. By April 6th, Congress did formally declare war. It wasn't a unanimous vote in the House and the Senate, but very, very strong majorities supported getting into the war. And that meant we came in on the side of the Allied powers. So the big ones there would be countries like England, countries like France, and also Russia. If you want to talk about some additional factors that might have played into us coming into the war and coming in on the side we did, we had a lot more economic connections to countries like Great Britain on the Allied powers side. So in addition to some of the pressing issues like the shipping and the Zimmerman note, we had a lot more to gain by the Allied side winning. So we came in on that side. Now, one thing to note, just because we officially declared war on April 6th didn't mean that we all of a sudden we're now fighting in World War II. We had a lot of work to do as a country to mobilize our armed forces to be able to fight. So it would still be some time before we would actually be actively helping the other Allied countries. But we were in it, and that would definitely have a big impact on the outcome of the war. And so that takes us to the other piece to talk about right now, and that would be the eventual Allied victory. Now, even though we officially got into the war in the spring of 1917, it would be some time before we would be actively involved in actually helping the Allied side. And especially before that all really started to take shape, things were starting to look a little dicey for the Allied side. One of the things that really helped them out is Russia was really struggling. Russia was an Allied country, and they were actually going through a revolution within their own country. And one of the things that led to was Russia actually withdrawing from the war before the war was done. And that was officially done in something called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, whereby Russia was officially out. Germany acquired some territory and basically the freedom to be able to focus all of their attention to the West. They no longer had to worry about an enemy to the east. They were out of their two-front war situation. And if you were going to place bets at that point in time, it wouldn't have been dumb to place your bets on the Central Powers being victorious in the war. Now, from our perspective, fortunately, things didn't turn out the way Germany hoped they would. Basically, what Germany did once Russia was out of the way is they loaded up all their resources and started heading towards France. And interestingly enough, when they ran out of steam and couldn't go any farther, was when they hit the Marne River again. You might remember the Schlieffen Plan they had to avoid a two-front war from the beginning of the war was derailed at the Marne River. Their last-ditch effort to try to win this war was derailed at the very same place. Now, part of what really worked against Germany is, at this point, was not only were they beginning to run low on the resources they had, but American forces were really beginning to pour into Europe, strengthening the Allied side basically day by day. So as far as the second battle of the Marne River, there were a lot of U.S. soldiers ready to counterattack. And then once Germany failed to get any farther than the Marne River, like I said, day by day, more Americans arrived, and that would turn out to be enough to keep Germany away and lead to all the countries on the Central Powers side eventually getting to the point of wanting to give up. And just one other thing to point out regarding the advantage of the U.S. soldiers coming in is this was a really nasty war. People were really beat down by it. And not only did the Allied side benefit from just simply getting more soldiers to be able to fight, but they were fresh soldiers, people who hadn't been beaten down by 2 or 3 years of fighting already. So they were fresh and ready to go, and it was really the difference maker for the Allied side. And so as far as timing, with the conclusion of the fighting, we see that take place officially on November 11th, 1918. And what officially took place there was an armistice was signed. And armistice is just a fancy word for an agreement to stop fighting. And so that was a day that really both sides were excited to get to, because it meant the fighting was over. Well, thanks for watching this video about the United States entry into World War I and the conclusion of the fighting. Hopefully you find it helpful and informative, and I hope that you'll join me for the last 2 videos in the series. Thanks for watching.